Hey everybody, my name is Obrian Rosario. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm from Queens, New York. Being Afro-Latino to me literally means a person of African descent that is also a person from Latin American descent. I think that for me, it carries a very political and social type of commitment as well when you are Afro-Latino in understanding both communities and the struggles that they have gone through. And so, yeah, for me, being Afro-Latino is political in it that it's also a form of resistance. Yeah, so both of my parents are born and raised in the Dominican Republic. I was born and raised in New York, and growing up, we didn't really identify as Afro-Latino. If anything, we identified as Latino or just Dominican. So I didn't really have a conceptualization for race or Afro-Latinidad or just like being black. I was actually often, one of the only dark-skinned or black people in any of my classes growing up, because New York City is such a segregated school system. And so, yeah, being one of the only black kids in class, elementary school meant that I was in a predominantly Latino school as the only black kid. In middle school, I was the only black kid in a sea of white students. And in high school, that was a more diverse population, but it was still a minority. So even then, like, other people perceived me as black, but I didn't perceive myself as black. My family members as well, my mom and my grandmother, although they are Afro-Latinas and are like phenotypically black, they don't identify as such. The other day I was just having a conversation with my family members, and the furthest that they'll take it is maybe Hispanic, but they don't understand like the idea of Afro-Latinidad. I remember when I was getting ready to go to high school, my aunt actually pulled me aside and she told me, make sure you bring home no black friends. And this is literally like my black aunt telling me not to bring home black friends. And so, yeah, that sort of really shaped my ethno-racial identity growing up. And then when I got into high school, transitioning into college, I was fortunate to be able to get into spaces of like community and social action and political education. It was in those spaces where I found other Latinos, other Afro-Latinos, and started to understand my race and how I am perceived in the world. I think that for me, I always knew that I was black, but I guess I vehemently denied it just like everybody else in my family. And so when I spoke about like other people sort of pointing the finger at me and telling me I was black, and I would just, defend myself and say I was literally like the I know black, I Dominican type of person. I remember like people in middle school, for instance, like in my yearbook, somebody wrote to me saying that like, I'll never like be anything in life and like calling me the N-word with the hard R. I remember like conceptualizing those things and sort of brushing it off and just saying, well, like they don't know what they're talking about because I'm Dominican, I'm not black. But once I got into high school, I actually joined this organization called Aspira, which is a nonprofit that is said to be an investment in Latino youth. And so learning about my blackness and my Afro-Latinidad actually came about being in spaces with other Afro-Latinos and just Latinos and African Americans that formed part of the Aspira. It was like a safe space for black and brown youth at Brooklyn Tech, at the school that I went to. And so, yeah, in that space was when I started to realize like black is beautiful and I don't have to separate myself from it. I don't have to vehemently deny it. I look at myself in the mirror every day and I am black. Yeah, I would say like during high school was when I really started to get into that racial identity conceptualization. I grew up with a single mother. We were low income. I faced homelessness. I faced eviction. My sister has dealt with her health throughout my entire life and has been in and out of hospitals. And so I've seen just like how Black people are treated inside of the system when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to schools, when it comes to just like public institutions, and the ways that all of those things fail us. So I always remember feeling like voiceless and feeling like I really wanted to speak up when my mother was facing some of the things that she had to face when we faced our eviction. When I got into high school, the program that I got into high school with was actually a program designed for Black and brown low income youth in New York City to gain access to these specialized high schools, which are loaded with resources and essentially are like mini colleges that prepare you for college. The program basically allowed for me to go to Brooklyn Tech and study for the summer before Brooklyn Tech for a month. And that basically prepared me to be in the specialized high school setting. And there was a lawsuit in New York City brought by Asian American parents and students feeling that there was some reverse discrimination going on there because Black and brown low income youth were getting these quote unquote free passes to the specialized high schools. And so I was involved as a student intervener in that case, basically on the side of the government saying that this program was good because it was providing opportunities for Black and brown low income youth like myself. And so, yeah, basically just like my identity as a Black and brown low income youth was something that really brought me into organizing. And that was like the first real opportunity that I was able to leverage my identity as an Afro Latino. I also was able to organize different rallies and different like lobbying and activations with young people around school segregation when I was in high school. And I always was able to really speak up on behalf of Black and brown youth, low income youth like myself in all of those advocacy spaces. Yeah, so I actually ended up at Howard because at a HBCU because I had come to DC for a gun violence prevention conference. While in high school, I was, getting involved in all the organizing that I could get involved in. And so while also doing some of the school segregation work, I was also doing work around gun violence prevention and the ways that Black and brown people and Black and brown low income people are disproportionately affected by it. And so, yeah, I had the privilege of going to Washington, D.C. to be a part of like the first ever completely youth led gun violence prevention conference. And I just fell in love with DC. I don't know what it was about the city. I think that I knew that I wanted to get outside of New York City for college because I had been there my whole life. I literally didn't really leave Queens and the borough that I grew up in until I started going to high school. And so, I was just like, I love New York City, but I'll get back to it. And so DC was like a city that was heavily involved in like politics and in policy and just moving the weight and moving the mantle for our communities. And so I just knew that I wanted to be in DC from that moment. And I applied to every school in DC, and Howard was one of the schools that I got into. It had basically gave me the best offer out of all the schools that I had applied to, but also because of the fact that I would have been able to really start exploring more of this part of myself and my identity. Again, it was high school when I started coming into like my racial identity. And so I knew that if I went to an HBCU, I'd be able to be exposed more towards like what it means to be Black and what it means to be a Black professional and how can I be a Black professional that gives back to my community. Yeah, I think that being at a HBCU completely changed my life. For me, like I lived my whole life just getting a buzz cut because I didn't really like dealing with my kinky hair. And as you can see now, I'm growing my locks out. And it's almost 2 years of me doing so. And that was something that happened because I was able to go to HBCU. Like I never really saw people wearing their natural hair or men really doing things with their hair. And so that was something that I was able to take in and embrace and adopt for myself as well. I wear these cowrie shells because they are representative of the motherland of Africa. They come from Africa and they were at times used as even as like currency or as tributes to gods in different regions, specifically like in Nigeria. And so for me, like it's a ultimate symbol of like wearing my crown and like adorning it with the gems of the motherland. I think that it also awakened in me something that was already there, but ignited a flame in understanding the African diaspora more and understanding this whole idea of Afro-Latinidad. If it wasn't for going to an HBCU, I don't think that I really would have continued to explore my identity in that way or even unravel like the political and social implications of it all. I was literally able to take a Spanish minor at my HBCU, and it's a little bit different than taking a Spanish minor at a PWI or at other universities and institutions because I was being taught Spanish by Black Spanish speakers, and that was just something that I never really saw outside of like my family members that were dark skinned. But again, like they didn't even identify as such. And so just seeing other Black Spanish speakers was something that was really powerful. And we got to talk about like Afro Latino issues and Black Spanish speaker and Black Hispanic issues while doing that in Spanish at an HBCU. And so all of those elements were just really enriching and really activated me as like a global citizen, as a Pan-Africanist, and understanding like the linkages between Black struggles everywhere. And so yeah, those are sort of all of the things that I've gotten from my experience thus far. Shango is the Afro-Latina and Spanish-speaking society at Howard University. It is one of the only Afro-Latina and Spanish-speaking societies across HBCUs and just across the United States in general. We have a mission statement which basically states that we aim to immerse students at Howard, the Howard University community, and everybody beyond in the Afro-Latina experience, doing so through political, social, and cultural activities. Yeah, so I was the president of Shango. I initially started off in Shango as the community outreach chair. I was able to become president because our president at the time when I was the community outreach chair was juggling two jobs, was juggling like a double major while also graduating. And so on top of the fact that like we were coming back from a pandemic, like just the team didn't have the capacity to be able to lead. But she noticed that, I was a really passionate leader and really passionate about making sure that we had these spaces on campus. And she literally asked me to step in as president. And so I stepped in like the spring, maybe March. And then for the rest of the year, I, got to putting the organization together. We ran elections. We did like a bachata night, which was like our first big event. And that was really big deal because we were able to really immerse people in the culture. And so, yeah, that was really my approach to being the president of Shango. It was like, how can we immerse people in the Afro-Latino experience and the Afro-Latina experience? Because that will really be able to bring us to that indifference. It's like sort of an active learning. It's a real simulation. And I was able to bring some of my skills from like grassroots community organizing to Shango in leading that. And I was able to also like use my network and leverage my network from New York and from just like connecting with different Latinos in the DMV area and really create something beautiful. And so yeah, that was kind of how I got involved. I was the president. I stepped down because I transitioned into the JD part of my joint degree program. I'm in the inaugural cohort of the BA JD 3 and 3 joint degree program at Howard University. Literally just graduated last week. Being that I was stepping into law school and was going to be really, really busy, I made sure to, be a part of the club and make sure that it had all of the bones and the foundation that it needed to continue to thrive. Yeah. So I went to law school because, as I mentioned earlier, my mother was a single mother. I grew up low income. I grew up on the other side of the law. Often, my father has and other of my family members have previously been incarcerated and have faced the criminal legal system and have just been impacted by racial capitalism and just the United States' laws in general. But none of my family members were ever lawyers and none of my family members ever really knew how to use the law. Yeah, part of why I wanted to come to law school was to be able to be that voice for the voiceless and be that advocate for people that can't advocate for themselves or that just don't know how to advocate for themselves. But also because I was able to see how the law is used as a tool for social change. When I was a student intervener, those civil rights lawyers literally came to my house. They literally, asked my mother and my sister and my family about, our experiences and were really intentional about the complaint that they wrote and just the ways that they communicated my rights to me and just the ways that they ensured that I knew that my story was something that could be used as a tool for change. And so, yeah, just sort of my background as somebody who has faced the systems and also someone who has also been able to use the law as a tool for power, as a tool for social change is something that has prompted me to want to go to law. And that's something that I knew that I wanted to do in my high school. We actually had a major system, so I was in the law and society major. And I got to take law classes in a courtroom when I was in high school. And so I knew that like law was in my future. And so for me, it felt like, divine timing when I walked into Howard and they asked me if I wanted to be a part of the inaugural cohort of the BAJD program, and I was accepted. And so, yeah, I just feel like I've been steady walking that path ever since. And I feel like as I've been walking my path and getting ready and just walking this legal journey, I've also been walking through this political and social and sort of overall like consciousness journey that I've been going through, wherein like I walked into Howard not really understanding my blackness, but now I feel like I'm an advocate and I'm on the front lines of being a Pan-Africanist and really like advocating on behalf of the diaspora. I think that one of my dreams is to be able to really work in an international or global law type of setting and sort of look at the laws that are impacting Black people around the world, especially in Latin America is my focus. In undergrad, I was actually working on a thesis for looking at anti-Blackness in the Dominican Republic and the legal interventions for such, and how we can be countering anti-Blackness with the law and using the law as a tool there. And so, yeah, the law can be a tool for racial justice. And I think that coming to Howard was something that I already knew that the law could be used as a tool for racial justice, but it sort of really opened my eyes to the ways that it can be used specifically for Black people, specifically for Afro-Latino folks, for marginalized people, and just for people that don't have a voice everywhere. As a young person, I spoke about like not wanting to be Black. I remember like so vividly, like even when I was very young, feeling like I had to wash the black off of my skin, that it wasn't coming off, and that I was dirty in some way. And I think that this world does everything that it does to tell us that Black isn't beautiful, that Black people don't deserve joy, that Afro-Latino people don't exist, and that, you're either one or the other. But I think that just like our ancestors and just like our family members and just like everybody that's came before us, we are able to exist in all different worlds and be in all different stages and be like astronomical in our existence. And I think that, something else that that comes to mind is the ways that like Afro-Latinidad isn't even just like living in two worlds. Like you're Latino, and you're Afro-Latino, and that carries so much weight in and of itself. But I think that that's a very beautiful thing and a beautiful existence to manifest when one is on this earth. And so, yeah, if I had one thing to tell young people is that being Afro-Latino, being Afro-Latina is a beautiful experience, and you get to live in three different worlds.